Welcome back to the deep dive. This is where we really try to get into the weeds on complex topics, just sifting through everything to find those compelling insights.
Right.
And today, we're delving into something, well, it's profoundly human, but it's also, let's be honest, pretty challenging.
Definitely.
We're looking at the really intricate ways we find humor sometimes, even when facing unimaginable tragedy.
It sounds counterintuitive, doesn't it?
It really does. I mean, you think about defining moments in history, right? They often spark these incredibly complex cultural responses, sometimes things you just wouldn't expect. Our immediate thoughts, they usually go straight to grief, shock, collective mourning.
Of course.
And that's undeniably a fundamental part of it, absolutely. But then there's this other reaction, often overlooked maybe, but just as human.
Humor.
Exactly, humor. So today we're taking a deep dive into the fascinating and, often confronting world of humor that was born from the September 11 attacks.
It's a tough subject.
It is. And it might make some listeners uncomfortable, and honestly, that very discomfort. That's kind of why exploring it feels so crucial.
Right. It tells us something important.
We'll be navigating through a carefully curated stack of sources, mostly looking at this comprehensive overview of 9/11 humor, how it showed up in different media.
Okay.
And the goal is to really understand its evolution, how people reacted to it, and maybe what these jokes, these comedic expressions, what they actually reveal about how we cope collectively with immense trauma.
Makes sense.
Okay, let's unpack this.
What's truly fascinating here, and this is really what this deep dive is trying to illuminate, is that this whole thing goes way beyond just, a few isolated jokes here and there. We're really looking at the role of humor as this psychological mechanism, right? And a cultural one, too.
Yeah.
Something that kind of kicks in right after a huge national tragedy.
It activates, almost.
Exactly. And look, this isn't just us guessing. Researchers have actually studied this quite a bit.
Oh, really?
Yeah, indicating it's significant, beyond just being funny or trying to lighten the mood, like Bill Ellis. He's a scholar who found jokes about the attacks started popping up in the U.S. literally the day after 9/11.
The day after.
Day after. And similarly, Ghislaine Kuiper is another researcher.
Yeah.
She saw jokes appearing on Dutch websites within 24 hours.
So international, too,
Immediately.
Yeah.
And she eventually collected something like 850 online jokes related to 9/11, bin Laden, the Afghanistan war, all by 2005.
850, that's a lot.
It is. And it really tells you something compelling. Humor isn't this delayed thing, some secondary reaction to trauma. It can be immediate, almost like instinctive.
Yeah.
Really deeply embedded human response.
Right, not just an afterthought.
So for you listening in, our mission today is to really trace this journey. How did humor pop up so fast after something so earth-shattering?
Yeah.
What forms did it take? Because it wasn't all the same, right?
Yeah.
Across different platforms, changing over time. And crucially, how did people react? How did that public reception shift from maybe immediate outrage or condemnation to maybe eventually some kind of acceptance, or all the variations in between?
That whole spectrum.
Exactly. We'll track it through literature, stage performances, movies, TV, print, even advertising.
Ooh, advertising. That sounds risky.
Yeah, we'll get there. And of course, online content. We really want to understand the many facets of this cultural and psychological response.
That's a great framework, and it really underlines the depth we need here. But I think it's also really important we anchor this discussion, in the facts of the tragedy itself.
Absolutely essential.
Because that's the stark backdrop, isn't it? Everything we talk about, all this humor, it emerged against that. So just a reset. September 11, 2001. The terrorist group Al-Qaeda carried out coordinated attacks against the U.S.
Right.
Tragically killing 2,977 innocent people, plus the 19 hijackers. I mean, it was an event that just sent shockwaves everywhere, changed everything.
Fundamentally.
And yet, like you just said, almost instantly, humor started to bubble up.
It's startling, isn't it?
It really is. The very next day, jokes were circulating in the U.S. and, like you said, on Dutch websites, too.
Right.
But that immediate humor, especially in those first raw days and weeks, it often got a really visceral reaction. People weren't ready.
Understandably.
There's a really notable, very public, early attempt. It was just a few weeks after the attacks. Comedian Gilbert Gottfried.
Ah, yes. The roast.
Exactly. The Hugh Hefner roast at the Friars Club. And he makes this joke about a flight planning to stop at the Empire State Building before going on to California.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oof is right. The audience reaction, you could feel it.
Oh.
Gasps,
Yes.
actual boos, some scattered, maybe nervous laughter. Very. And then that iconic shout someone yelled out, "Too soon."
The phrase was born, basically.
Pretty much. It just perfectly captured that immediate gut-level discomfort, that sense of, no, you can't joke about this yet.
Yeah.
But here's what makes that moment so revealing. Gottfried's next move.
Right, the pivot. After that joke totally bombed, he just seamlessly launches into this incredibly crude, long, absolutely no-holds-barred version of the aristocrats joke.
The ultimate dirty joke.
The ultimate. And here's where it gets really interesting. That joke, which by any normal standard is way more offensive, way more graphic than the 9/11 joke, it got huge laughs, uproarious laughter, thunderous applause. The place apparently went nuts.
It's bizarre, isn't it? That contrast.
Totally bizarre. It just highlights this incredibly complex, often contradictory line between what's too soon, what's unacceptable, and what can somehow counterintuitively provide this cathartic release.
Right.
Even if it's through dark humor or absurd humor, it makes you wonder, what is it psychologically? Why did the aristocrats land when the plane joke didn't?
Is it the directness, the literalness of the first one versus the abstract nature of the second?
Maybe. Or maybe the shared ritual of a known dirty joke. I don't know, but it's fascinating.
That Gottfried moment, it really does crystallize that complex psychology.
Yeah.
And it leads us right into looking at the initial hesitation, the very pronounced hesitation we saw in mainstream media.
Right. The big players held back.
They did. It was such a contrast to those immediate individual jokes or the stuff spreading online like wildfire.
Yeah.
While Gottfried was, testing the waters in a live setting.
Painfully testing them.
Yeah, right. Major late night shows, humorous publications, they mostly just waited. For weeks, sometimes.
Why do you think? Just fear of the backlash?
Partly, sure. But it seems like it was deeper than that. It wasn't just about timing. It was grappling with, like, an existential question. What kind of humor, if any humor at all, could possibly be okay for something like this?
How do you even approach it?
Exactly. The Onion, the satirical newspaper, they're revered for being edgy, irreverent, often dark.
Yeah, they don't usually pull punches.
They don't. But they provide this really compelling, almost agonizing example of that internal struggle. They actually canceled the issue that was supposed to come out on September 11th.
Wow.
Knew immediately its planned content would be just horribly wrong, tone deaf, irrelevant.
Right.
Then they took the pretty extraordinary step of skipping the next issue, too.
Yeah.
Issue 33. Just took a full week off, let the staff just reflect, process.
That's huge for a publication like that.
It is. And the internal debate was apparently really intense, almost like a crisis of identity for them. Writer Todd Hanson, he put it really well. He said their normal, irreverent, edgy, cynical, dark humor wasn't going to be emotionally appropriate.
He's probably right.
Yeah. And the stakes were really high. Apparently, many employees threatened to quit if the Onion ran something they felt was inappropriate or, like, exploitative.
So it was a real moral stand for the writers.
Absolutely. It just highlights the immense pressure, that ethical tightrope they were walking, that deep moral reckoning. It wasn't just, is it too soon? It was about the very nature of humor itself, its role, when the world is just reeling.
Yeah. How do you find your voice again? Especially when your voice is satire.
Right. How do you recalibrate when your usual tools feel obsolete or even harmful?
That's such an incisive question. And, The Onion's eventual response, it really did become this kind of masterclass in satirical coping. Not just for them, but maybe for the country.
How so?
Well, they came back with issue 34 on September 27th. And it was almost all about the attacks. But, and this is key, it had this very specific, very carefully thought out editorial approach. They recognized the gravity, obviously, but they also seemed to understand their unique role. They could help people process the surreal, often absurd reality that was unfolding.
Through satire.
Exactly. And the headlines from that issue, they just perfectly capture this nuanced take. It was brilliant commentary on the responses, societal, political, rather than mocking the victims or the event itself.
Can you give some examples?
Oh, yeah. Like U.S. vows to defeat whoever it is we're at war with.
Perfect. Captures that initial confusion.
Totally. That lack of a clear enemy, the uncertainty, or American life turns into bad Jerry Bruckheimer movie.
Yeah, it did feel kind of horribly cinematic, didn't it?
Surreal is the word. And my personal favorite, just because it's so human and mundane, but also poignant. Not knowing what to do, woman bakes American flag cake.
Oh, that's brilliant. It's not a joke about the destruction.
No, it's an observation about the experience of it all, the aftermath, how people were trying to cope, show solidarity, even in small, slightly bewildered ways.
So what was their rule editorially?
They were really clear. Jokes that directly poked fun at the loss of life. Cut. Absolutely not.
Okay.
Like, apparently there was a proposed headline, "America's stronger than ever, says Quadragon officials." Wisely, they decided that was inappropriate.
Yeah, good call.
Instead, they deliberately focused their satire on the feelings of Americans at the time. You know, the anxiety, the confusion, that sudden surge of patriotism, the desire for action.
Focusing on the reaction, not the event itself.
Precisely. And this approach, it got overwhelmingly positive reactions. Critics, the public, people saw it as this touchstone of post-9/11 commentary.
It resonated.
It really did. And in this remarkable gesture, they credited all the articles just to The Onion collectively, not individual writers.
Oh, interesting. Like a unified voice.
Yeah, emphasizing it was the shared collective effort, processing trauma through the unique, sometimes uncomfortable power of satire. So here's where it gets really interesting. This wasn't just satire, it felt like a form of collective psychological processing. By creating that shared comedic space, they let people laugh not at the tragedy, but maybe at the absurdity of the situation or their own complex reactions. It validated the confusion, offered critical distance when everything else felt so heavy.
That makes a lot of sense. So if The Onion was this thoughtful, almost sort of academic satire,
Yeah.
then you have George Carlin, ever the iconoclast.
Oh, Carlin, right.
He offered a completely different but maybe equally vital brand of commentary. Immediate, unflinching.
When was this?
Just a month after the attacks, in his special Complaints and Grievances,
Yeah.
he just dove right into those raw, exposed nerves. No subtlety.
Typical Carlin.
Absolutely. He wasn't aiming for comfort. He was aiming for truth, no matter how uncomfortable.
So what did he target?
Well, he went straight after that pervasive rhetoric,
Yeah.
meticulously dissecting that mantra. Otherwise, the terrorists win.
Yes. That was everywhere.
Everywhere. He just ridiculed the idea that any action, no matter how misguided, was suddenly justified by this, fear-mongering catchphrase. He even wrote darkly about his newfound willingness to cooperate with the government in this extreme time, specifically mentioning Governor Bush.
Subtle dig there.
Very subtle. Highlighting that perceived overreach of authority, that sudden, almost unquestioning patriotism where any dissent felt un-American. His humor wasn't just biting, it was this aggressive critique of the official narrative.
And the public's reaction to it.
Exactly. And then he just escalated into pure absurdism. Proposed retaliation through fart warfare.
Fart warfare.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Seriously. Classic Carlin boundary pushing. His whole approach felt like this cathartic release valve, not just for general anger, but specifically for frustration at the absurdity, maybe the manipulation within the national dialogue.
It was confrontational.
Very. A potent critique of rhetoric,
Yeah.
an outlet for frustration and disbelief.
Yeah.
So it's another facet entirely compared to Gottfried's shock humor or The Onion's careful satire.
It really is. You've got the shock, the thoughtful satire, the direct challenge to rhetoric, all emerging so quickly.
So what does that tell us, you think, about the different psychological needs humor fills when a society is grappling with something so huge, especially when those narratives of patriotism are so dominant?
That's a fascinating question. It really underscores how trauma, especially national trauma, just fractures our usual emotional responses, right? Into all these different, sometimes contradictory coping mechanisms. It speaks to the diverse ways we try to grapple with the incomprehensible. And as time went on, as 9/11 became this indelible part of history, the humor kept evolving. It permeated different media, each one sort of testing and reshaping that line of what was acceptable.
So where to go next?
Well, let's look at literature. That's often a space for deeper, more sustained reflection, right? Even with humor.
True. Novels, longer form.
Exactly. So in 2006, Jess Walter published this satirical novel, The Zero.
Okay.
Really interesting premise. It features a New York City cop who has self-inflicted brain damage, which conveniently causes these memory gaps in the period right after 9/11.
A narrative device.
Totally. And it let Walter explore the psychological aftermath, the trauma, the fragmented, almost surreal reality people felt in New York, but through this darkly humorous, absurdist lens. The cop's unreliable memory becomes this metaphor for society struggling to grasp what happened.
Clever.
Yeah. Then jump forward a decade, 2016, something really unexpected pops up online, a Seinfeld spec script.
Seinfeld. But the show ended way before 9/11.
Right, ended in 98. But this comedian, Billy Domino, he wrote this script imagining an episode set in New York in those days, right after the attacks.
Wow. That sounds Risky.
He apparently conceived it initially as an exercise in bad taste.
I can imagine. So what happens in it?
Oh, it's classic Seinfeld absurdity, just applied with audacious irreverence to this incredibly serious event. It proves their mundane anxieties would just persist, even then.
Okay, give me the details.
All right, Jerry, total germaphobe, hypochondriac, right? He becomes convinced the dust from the towers is contaminating his food.
Huh. Okay, I can picture that.
Elaine, she's initially relieved she won't have to break up with this boyfriend she dislikes who worked at the towers because she assumes he's dead.
Oh, no!
Oh, yes. Only to find herself accidentally engaged to him when he turns up alive.
Classic Elaine awkwardness, but dark. Very
dark. George. Shameless opportunist George. He basks in unearned glory after being mistaken for a hero.
Of course he does.
And Kramer. Maybe the most audacious bit. He's desperately trying to get back a high-quality box cutter he accidentally loaned to Muhammad Atta.
Oh my God. He loaned Atta a box cutter.
In the script, yeah. And The Guardian reviewed the script, saying, it is indeed in bad taste, but it perfectly captures the self-obsessed way these characters would handle such a crisis.
That's actually a really sharp observation.
It is. It shows how humor, even bad taste humor, can reveal character, cultural truths, and how time passing shifts our perceptions, allows explorations that would have been unthinkable right after.
It filters catastrophe through human foibles.
Exactly. It gives us that weird window.
And the stage, live performance, that also became this really vital platform for this evolving humor.
Right, you mentioned Gottfried again.
Yeah, his journey is just the quintessential example of how fine that line is between offensive and cathartic.
The too soon joke bombing.
Bombing spectacularly. He said himself he lost an audience bigger than anybody has ever lost an audience. But then that pivot to The Aristocrats, which, despite being way more graphic, got the biggest laughs I ever heard.
That immediate shift.
It's incredible. It really underscores that invisible line. Maybe the direct shock of the literal reference is harder to take than the abstract absurdity of a known dirty joke.
Maybe the dirty joke provides a framework, a known quantity to project anxiety onto.
Could be. Creating that psychological distance from the actual trauma.
Then there was Joan Rivers. She stepped over a line for many people.
Oh yeah, highly controversial. This is 2002, performing in London.
What was the joke?
She suggested 9/11 widows would be, ironically disappointed if their husbands were found alive.
Oh, wow.
Because they'd have to return the compensation money.
Yikes. That's rough.
Very rough. It sparked huge condemnation.
Yeah.
Harold Schaeberger, the head of the International Association of Firefighters, he condemned it publicly.
Rightfully so, probably.
Yeah, it highlights the real-world impact, the ethical dilemmas, when humor seems to mock real suffering or financial hardship from loss.
It loses any potential for catharsis. It just becomes angering.
Exactly. But then, the landscape shifts completely when personal connection comes in.
Ah, like Pete Davidson.
Exactly like Pete Davidson. His father, Scott Davidson, was a New York firefighter, Ladder 118. Tragically died in service on 9/11.
That personal loss gives him a totally unique context.
Completely. It's almost unassailable. He's openly used 9/11 jokes in his stand-up routines.
Which might sound shocking out of context.
Right. But his identity as a child of a victim fundamentally changes how audiences perceive it. It grants him this complex social permission, maybe.
Permission to reclaim the narrative, process his own trauma through comedy.
In a way that would be condemned if someone else said it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you saw this really powerfully in 2021, the 20th anniversary. He co-hosted that comedy special with Jon Stewart, NYC Still Rising after 20 years.
Right, I remember that.
Lots of big comedians. And importantly, the proceeds went to 9/11 charities.
So the intent was clearly positive. Healing, remembrance.
Exactly. It cemented this idea that humor, even dark humor, coming from someone with that direct, painful connection and with positive intent, it can transform from potential offense into this powerful tool for healing, remembrance, community building.
It really makes you think, how does the identity of the comedian, their personal stake, or the intent, how does that change how you, as an audience member, react? Does it create a different moral calculus?
Absolutely seems to.
That's such a crucial distinction, isn't it? Personal connection versus the outsider. And it really maps onto what we see on screen, too, in film and TV.
Yeah, the broader mediums.
Right, with bigger audiences, more gatekeepers usually. And you see this whole spectrum. Extreme caution, self-censorship, but also direct, provocative engagement.
So starting with caution.
Yeah. Like 2012, this French comedy film, The Players, Jean Dujardin was in it. They actually cut a 9/11 joke from the international release.
What was the joke?
Pretty provocative. A guy seducing a woman in a New York apartment, and in the background, a plane hits the World Trade Center.
Ooh, yeah. I can see why they'd cut that.
Apparently, it was explicitly to improve its Oscar chances. Shows those commercial critical pressures dictating what's acceptable, especially for global audiences.
Prestige versus provocation.
Right. Even The Simpsons, usually sharp but broadly accepted, they tiptoed. 2012 episode, Moonshine River, Bart's Happy New York's 2 least favorite buildings are gone.
Oh.
But he immediately defensively corrects himself, adds Old Penn Station and Shea Stadium to the list.
The classic Simpsons sidestep. Acknowledge, then soften.
Exactly. Preemptive self-censorship to avoid controversy.
But then you have shows like South Park. They don't usually sidestep.
No, they thrive on controversy. And they went right at 9/11 humor, confronting the trauma head-on. November 2001, just 2 months after, the episode Osama bin Laden has farty pants.
Right, very early.
Super early, and it directly showed the fear. Kids in gas masks at school because of the anthrax scares.
Wow, reflecting the reality.
But then it used absurd, violent humor. Cartman killing bin Laden in this completely over-the-top Looney Tunes-style fight.
As a coping mechanism.
Exactly. Let viewers process the absurdity, channel the anger, find release through this cartoonish revenge.
Catharsis through absurdity.
Then years later, October 2006, they tackled 9/11 conspiracy theories directly. Mystery of the Urinal Deuce.
Yes.
Cartman investigates, concludes. Kyle did 9/11.
Of course.
Yeah.
Pure South Park absurdity.
But it showed humor being used not just for immediate coping, but for direct satire on the cultural stuff around the attacks. Misinformation, alternate narratives.
Using humor to critique the discourse itself.
Exactly. Now, Family Guy, also known for boundary pushing, maybe even more reliant on shock value sometimes.
Definitely, lots of cutaway gags.
They've had multiple, often very provocative 9/11 jokes. November 2011, back to the pilot. Brian and Stewie time travel, prevent 9/11.
Okay, standard trope for them. What happens?
Unintended consequence. A second civil war, nuclear attacks on the East Coast, total apocalypse.
Oh, so they have to undo it.
They have to go back again and cause 9/11 to happen to restore the timeline. And they even say, self-awarely, their celebratory cheers of causing 9/11 to happen again would sound bad if taken out of context.
Wow, that's meta and dark. How was that received?
Critics jumped on it. Custom made for a too soon label. Time magazine asked if it went too far. It provocatively suggested the event was so foundational its absence might be worse.
Bold, very bold.
Then, season 16, boy, dog meets girl, Grog. Stewie makes an off-color joke about planes not landing, admits it's bad, even for him, and Brian reveals he was supposed to be on Flight 11.
Oh, the meta reference.
Exactly. To Seth MacFarlane, the creator, missing that flight because of the hangover, that personal connection layer again totally shifts how you hear the joke, gives it that ironic license.
Right, like the Davidson effect.
Maybe the most telling example of evolving standards. A deleted scene from season 5, Meet the Quagmires, aired 2007. On the DVD, there's a scene where Brian challenges someone to a fight, says, "Meet me on top of the World Trade Center, September 11, 2001 at 8 a.m.
Jeez.
But that scene was cut from the broadcast version. Even years later, that direct, time-stamped reference, too sensitive for network TV, shows the careful judgments being made.
The line was still there, just maybe moved slightly.
Exactly. And there are other Family Guy examples. Visiting Ground Zero, Peter making wildly ignorant guesses about what happened, corrected by Brian. Satire on misinformation, insensitivity.
Using Peter's ignorance for commentary.
Yeah. Or Peter impersonating James Woods to promote a fictional 9/11 comedy film, just constantly pushing boundaries.
And across TV, you see this whole range.
Yeah.
Cautious censorship, direct satire, shock value.
All with different levels of acceptance. It makes you ask, when does pushing the envelope feel like commentary, and when does it just feel gratuitous, sacrificing insight for shock?
It's a line constantly being redrawn, isn't it? By creators, by audiences.
It really is.
But that line, as you said, it seems to harden almost instantly, become almost unbreakable when commercial interests get involved.
Ah, yes. The advertising angle.
We've seen artists, comedians push boundaries. Sometimes they get outcries, sometimes acclaim. But when advertising tries to harness the imagery, the memory, the pain for profit,
the reaction is usually pretty negative, uniformly negative.
swift, unified, overwhelmingly negative. The perception of intent just completely shifts.
People see it as exploitation.
Exactly. And there's this Stark, almost unbelievable example from 2016, right before the 15th anniversary. Miracle Mattress, a store in San Antonio, Texas.
Oh, I think I remember hearing about this. It was bad, right?
Unbelievably bad. They aired this commercial for a 9/11 sale.
A 9/11 sale, seriously.
The owner's daughter is in front of two employees, explains they're commemorating the Twin Towers by selling mattresses at twin prices. Twin Towers, twin price slogan. Then she accidentally pushes the employees, standing behind her, into twin piles of mattresses. One pile has an American flag on top. They collapse dramatically.
This sounds like a parody, but it was real.
It was real. Then, after feigning shock, she turns to the camera and says, "With this chilling lack of awareness, we'll never forget."
Wow. Just wow.
The ad got pulled fast, obviously, but it hit the internet and just exploded. Intense criticism everywhere. Social media, news, Entertainment Weekly called it might be most offensive commercial ever.
I can believe it.
Yelp, Facebook pages flooded with hate, death threats, boycott calls. The owner, Mike Bonanno, whose daughter conceived and starred in it, gave this profuse public apology. Closed the store indefinitely, promised disciplinary action, donations to 911 charities, just total damage control.
A complete disaster. But it perfectly illustrates that point, right? Commercial exploitation versus artistic expression.
Yeah, absolutely. The too soon reaction becomes outright outrage, disgust, when profit seems to be the motive. It's seen as profound disrespect, exploiting collective grief for money, an unforgivable moral failing.
There's no ambiguity there.
Not really. Now, slightly more bizarre, less controversial, commercial example. Our sources mention bars and restaurants in Brazil named Bin Laden.
Named Bin Laden. Why?
Apparently inspired by the owners actually looking like or thinking they look like Osama bin Laden.
Okay, that's weird. Definitely dark humor, but different.
Very different. It lacks that explicit, exploitative profit motive of the mattress ad. The humor, still provocative, feels more ironic, detached, macabre curiosity, maybe. Not direct commercialization of the tragedy itself.
It highlights that intent matters hugely, especially the profit intent.
Absolutely. So why do you think that is? Why does commercializing tragedy feel so fundamentally different, so much more offensive than even a really provocative comedian? What's that core ethical distinction?
That's the core question, isn't it? I think it comes down to perceived authenticity and respect. A comedian, even a controversial one, you might see them as engaging in artistic expression, right? Maybe aiming for catharsis, social commentary, however clumsy. But a commercial, its fundamental purpose is almost always profit. When that intersects with national tragedy, it just feels grotesque, like commodifying collective pain, turning something solemn into a marketing gimmick.
That perceived intent draws a really clear line.
A very clear line, which sets us up perfectly for the last category, online humor, because that operates with totally different rules, or maybe sometimes no rules at all.
The Wild West, basically.
Kind of. The internet, with its anonymity, its speed, its global reach, it's become this common, almost totally unfiltered pipeline for 9/11 jokes, memes, often transforming the tragedy into something more abstract, irreverent, participatory.
So what forms does that take?
Well, one really common enduring form is just lampooning 9/11 conspiracy theories.
Oh, Bush did 9/11.
Exactly. Or jet fuel can't melt steel beams. Those phrases started as serious claims, right? Unfounded but serious. Now they're just co-opted into ironic, absurdist memes.
So it's not endorsing the theories.
Usually the opposite. It's mocking the proponents, highlighting the absurdity, or just engaging with the topic through this layer of detached, ironic humor. It's poking fun at the discourse around the event, not the event itself.
Critiquing the narratives through ridicule.
Right. Reflects skepticism, maybe a desire to dismantle those narratives. Then you get the more direct stuff. Often really shocking viral videos on Vine back in the day, now TikTok, elsewhere.
What kind of videos?
Memes featuring fictional characters, celebrities, whatever, causing the attacks. Like a clip of a cartoon character throwing something. Immediately cuts to footage of the planes hitting the towers, often Flight 175 hitting the South Tower, with a deadpan caption like SpongeBob did 9/11.
Wow. Pure shock value.
Pure shock value, designed for that quick, visceral reaction. Taps into a different sensibility than, say, The Onion's careful satire. It's transgressive, unexpected. Maybe appeals more to younger people who didn't live through the immediate trauma.
Right. Less burdened by the original context.
Then there was that fascinating global example in 2023, Barbenheimer.
Oh yeah, the movie phenomenon. How did that connect?
Well, some Japanese Twitter users started making and sharing 9/11 memes in response.
9/11 memes. Why?
Things like the Twin Towers and pink smoke, or Barbie posing with Osama bin Laden.
Okay, that's provocative. What was the reasoning?
It was direct cultural response. The context is crucial. Oppenheimer, the film, deals with the atomic bomb. Hugely sensitive, traumatic subject in Japan, the only country ever attacked with atomic weapons.
Ah, so this was pushback.
Exactly. A form of cultural pushback, or maybe equalizing through dark humor. Using a major Western tragedy to respond to perceived Western insensitivity about their historical trauma.
Wow, a global confrontational exchange of humor.
Yeah, it shows how online spaces allow that cross-cultural commentary, challenging narratives, pushing back against perceived American exceptionalism, maybe.
Using memes for geopolitical commentary, almost.
Kind of. And finally, you've got that enduring meme of George W. Bush hearing the news in that Florida elementary school classroom.
The reading photo, yeah, that's everywhere.
That iconic image capturing this moment of crisis, it's endlessly recontextualized online, used to show Bush learning about everything. Celebrity gossip, new video games, whatever.
Trivializing the original context.
Completely into this meta commentary on his perceived reaction, or just the absurdity of how big events get framed. So what does this all mean? This digital space, it's unfiltered, collaborative, global. Humor emerges differently, often irreverent, evolves rapidly, often anonymous, used to mock, to cope, challenge narratives, engage in cultural commentary, far removed from mainstream media gatekeepers.
So how do you think that anonymity, that virality, that global reach, how does it fundamentally influence the types of jokes made about tragedies and their ability to spread so far so fast?
That's the million-dollar question for the digital age, isn't it?
It really is. And if we connect all of this to the bigger picture, what we've really seen throughout this deep dive is just how pervasive, how incredibly varied, and how deeply ingrained this humor about 9/11 has become.
It's undeniable.
From literally the day after it emerged, it evolved, it got passed around on all these platforms, met with such different reactions, controversy, acceptance, deep analysis. It's just this powerful testament to how humans try to process trauma.
Yeah.
That complex, often contradictory need to make sense of the senseless.
Yeah.
So just to kind of synthesize the key findings, humor was this immediate, sometimes shocking coping mechanism for individuals in the initial aftermath.
Right, the Gottfried effect.
Exactly. Mainstream media, like The Onion, took a much more cautious, satirical, carefully constructed approach, trying to process collective feelings, not mock the loss. We saw iconoclasts like Carlin using humor for immediate, biting critique of rhetoric, while others like Gottfried faced backlash, then found connection.
And the personal connection changed everything for someone like Pete Davidson.
Absolutely. His position allowed tragedy to be reclaimed for healing, remembrance, community building through comedy, and then online. Humor became this unfiltered, collaborative, often irreverent tool for mocking, processing, cultural commentary, challenging narratives, even fostering global dialogues about trauma.
It covers so much ground.
It really does. Humor, even about profound tragedy, it's just deeply, fundamentally human. It's how we process, how we rebel against the unbearable, how we cope, and ultimately, how we remember.
A release valve, social critique.
A way to grasp at meaning when the world feels upside down. All of those things.
That's a really insightful synthesis of this whole journey. And as we start to wrap up this deep dive, it definitely leaves us with some big lingering questions, doesn't it? About the legacy of all this humor.
For sure.
Like, does constantly recontextualizing 9/11 through comedy, especially online where it's so irreverent and fast-moving, does that eventually normalize the event? Does it diminish its gravity for future generations who didn't live through it?
Or the opposite.
Or, conversely, does it keep the conversation alive in new, unexpected, maybe more accessible ways, ensuring it stays this potent cultural touchstone constantly being reinterpreted?
How will future generations understand it? Not just as history, but as this cultural thing that spurred all this comedy.
Exactly. What does that mean for their understanding? And maybe for you listening, something to reflect on. As the years pass, does too soon ever really disappear?
Good question.
Or does it just transform into new kinds of sensitivity, new understandings, shifting with each generation, each new cultural context? It feels like a line that will probably always be debated, always redrawn, and maybe always serve as this fascinating measure of our collective, evolving relationship with tragedy.
The world is in your hands.
Okay, Grandhead Zanotto. You can trust me. I'll get Ford.
Good boy. Go now. We're running out of time.